very, very challenging context. This is, I think, why you have chosen the theme for this particular session. If I may just take a minute or two to point to specific examples which we may all be aware of, which underscore the need for us to accelerate implementation of the AFCFTA. When the pandemic hit in March 2020, in April 2020, there were export restrictions that were imposed by those who produce the germ-killing products, of course the vaccines, I'll say more, as well as has created food insecurity on the African continent. Whilst at the same time we say that, and we are correct, that we have 60% of the world's arable land resilience and Africa's self-sufficiency. This is the backdrop. As we speak today, Africa has suffered and losses of, by the estimates of African Development Bank, $165 billion. This is the amount by which GDP in Africa fell as a result of the pandemic. 53% of export markets completely wiped out. There are very, very positive signs amongst, in this context of Moon, about the AFCFTA and its potential, particularly potential to ensure Africa's resilience as well as signals. Today, 43 positive instrument of ratification. We have potentially an instrument, a legal instrument that will enable us to liberalize our economy with development, not mechanism, but with development at the very core of this trade agreement. One of those projections is that by the year 2035, Africa, where we implement this agreement effectively, Africa has the potential to lift 100 million Africans out of extreme poverty and abject poverty, largely, mainly the beneficiaries being women, and that will increase intra-Africa exports by over 80%. This, to me, these projections, to me, speak to the resilience that we all need to strive for. Because where we are able to achieve these...
Thank you, the press team, for waiting, for being patient. In front of you, you have the chair of F15, Minister of Finance of Kenya, His Excellency Ukuru. We have Minister of Finance of the Kingdom of Morocco, Her Excellency Nadia. We have also Her Excellency Dr. Monique Sanzaragama, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Now we can proceed with the questions. Over to Your Excellencies.
Yeah, thank you very much. As you know, the F15 Finance Ministers of AU were gathered here in Rabat, Morocco, for the last 2 days, where we are effectively engaged on a number of issues. But the key among them is the financing of the AU. We've realized over time that as a body, AU plays a critical role in the socio-economic and political sector of the continent. By emphasizing on the issue of solidarity, togetherness, build our economies in a way that's going to benefit the entire world, the entire continent. But over time, the funding has remained below expectations. So what we did is that we came up with a practical funding to manage the budget of the AU. We come up with a pragmatic approach in emphasizing on the budget and the funding to the organization. Number two, we also came up with a certain innovative approach in enabling countries to do the necessary contribution, the necessary disbursement to the Commission. How we have done it is that there been a proposal which has been adopted by a number of countries that we impose import levy of 0.2% that now act as a collective fund to enable countries disburse their contribution in good time. Thirdly, we also discussed about shared experience on how best we are going to support our economies to be resilient in view of the adverse nature of the prevailing economic circumstances. You know the challenge of COVID, the problem brought by Russia-Ukraine conflict that has led to a number of challenges, including increasing the cost of logistics or transportation of import exports. Number two, there are also a serious problem of availability of grain. There's been increase in fertilizer prices, and generally also globally, fuel prices has been on the rise. So these have been shared a number of areas on how best we can support to enable our economy to be resilient in a challenging situation like this. A number of recommendations were agreed upon that we are going to now advance to the Executive Council for further consideration by the Assembly when they sit in it. We've come up with a quite pragmatic approach. In addition, we also agreed to support the reform initiative of the AU. There are a number of reforms that are currently undergoing on dealing with issues of budget and funding. We resolve as finance minister to support and ensure that these reforms reflect the realities of the time. I think basically those are the areas that we will cover, and we are keen. We want to thinking of also expanding this committee to make sure that all the various criteria are taken on board without losing the principle of solidarity and brotherhood as a continent. There are certain countries that have been in Taiwan who have been making significant contribution to the budget of the Union. But now we felt that the principle around the establishment of AU is not necessarily about the ability to pay, but it's about making sure that no country is left behind despite the size of their economy or their ability to do. So we've come up with a mix of all these criteria so that whatever decision we make is reflective of all our position as a continent. We also touched on the issue of the peace fund, where we think as a continent, we have a responsibility and a duty of care to our neighbors, to our brothers, to any part of the continent that is in challenge, experiencing security challenge. We've agreed on how to go about it, and we expressed firm solidarity to ensure that we have a responsibility to ourselves and to the rest of the continent by establishing, and strengthening this dimension. But some of the decisions, we made the necessary proposal, but a decision to be made at the Assembly level. I think those are the basically areas that we will discuss. The meeting has been well attended by a number of ministers from various regions, south, west, east, north, central. They have been quite effectively attended by relevant ministers. I think those are the areas that I wanted to bring to your attention, and I thank you.
Merci. Je tenais d'abord à féliciter et remercier M. le ministre qui a présidé pendant ce jour cette retraite, qui était une première retraite du F15, et qui a été une occasion d'échanges extrêmement riches. Et Madame la vice-présidente de la Commission également. Par rapport à votre question, je pense que Monsieur le Président a déjà répondu. Je pense que l'idée n'était pas tant de trouver des nouveaux mécanismes, mais plutôt d'abord faire en sorte que ceux qui existent déjà et qui ont été convenus au niveau des chefs d'État soient plus efficaces et plus efficients. Donc, nous avons les contributions des États, donc il s'agit de les avoir on va dire, de façon régulière, en temps et heure et de façon importante. Il y a également le prélèvement des 0,2 que Monsieur le Président de séance vient de rappeler, donc sur les imports. Donc c'est aussi leur faisabilité, des expériences qui vont fonctionner, d'autres qui sont en cours de mise en place, en tenant compte. Vraiment l'idée c'est une plus grande autonomie de l'Union africaine avec les mécanismes qui existent aujourd'hui, mais les utiliser de manière efficiente quant à leur collecte, leur mise en œuvre, mais aussi dans la façon, on va dire, de gérer les investissements et les dépenses également. Donc il s'agissait plus de ça. Plus globalement, je pense qu'il s'agissait également de parler de mécanismes de financement cette fois, des économies du continent. Et là, il y a eu plusieurs sujets sur trouver des solutions innovantes, travailler un peu plus sur les réformes, on va dire, au sein des pays, parce que ce qui compte, c'est que les revenus des pays se développent, mais également une meilleure coordination avec les institutions financières, qu'elles soient régionales ou multilatérales, pour mieux coordonner tous les efforts en faveur du financement de l'Union africaine, mais des pays, des économies des pays de l'Union africaine.
بخصوص الأزمة الأوكرانية وتحديات الجائحة كوفيد 19 التي التأمل الاجتماع على رفيع المستوى من عملية الاتحاد الافريقي من اجلها. يعني كنتحدثوا يعني على ازمتين اللي خلاونا نشوف اتجاه لا سوفرانتي اندستريال لا سوفرانتي لا كونتينيو، يعني اون ماتيير لا سوفرانتي سانيتير يعني سياده صحيه او سياده غذائيه، سوفرانتي اليمونتير. يعني شنو الاجراءات ايضا الميكانيزمات اللي كانت يعني في هذا الاتجاه، وشنو الخلاصات يعني اللي خلص الى الاجتماع من اجل يعني الوصول للسياده، الحديث عن سياده القاره الافريقيه لمعنى يعني في المجال الغذائي والمجال الصحي.
Thank you for the question and answer in English. I'm still learning the language. Okay. It's a general question you ask. The sovereignty of the continent is very important. And this conversation has taken place at two levels at least. We had a consideration of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area as one of the key achievements of the continent that needs to be supported further because it boasts of opportunities to industrialize, to trade among ourselves, to create jobs, to reduce poverty. A number of 100 million citizens of this continent by 2035 will be taken out of poverty if we focus on the implementation of this program. That's one area. But it means that a lot has to be done in terms of improving production and productivity. That is including across all the sectors, agriculture, industrialization, but also the services industry and an environment for doing business across borders, implementation of the infrastructure, development programs we have as African Union, so that indeed movement of people, movement of goods, movement of services can be done, including also the digitalization, the digital economy, which is another key area. Another aspect that has been mentioned indeed is the capacity of member states to have to raise their resources, to expand their fiscal space. so that we can contribute to the resilience of their economies and therefore indirectly support the efforts at the continental level. So these are some of the aspects that transpired in the different discussions and presentations. We were thrilled to see that everyone is actually sticking to this possibility we have as Africa. If we really did a few things to see our capacity to sustain ourselves increase. Of course, this does not mean that we don't need to partner. Partnership is important. Another theme that transpired is how we can also leverage the international markets. How can we claim a space in the global financial architecture a little bit more through empowering our financial institutions of the continent and also speaking with one voice. I think that those are some of the things that were discussed. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add one more emphasis here, is that as alluded to by one of the speakers yesterday, when there are crises, the global crisis like what we saw with COVID, the challenges now in the world, that at the end of the day, Africa is on its own. And therefore, the solution also lies here. And one of the key areas of roadmap to getting a proper solution is by enhancing interconnectivity, by enhancing trade, and the necessary infrastructure between ourselves. And that's why FCFTA wants it to address that we need to have policy harmonization, we need to have common customs, we need to connect our countries, we need to trade with each other, and we need to facilitate the movement of goods and services appropriately. Through this, they will be able now to not only share experience, but also facilitate the flow of all these necessary arrangements. That is very, very important. We've seen actually when at the onset of the challenge of COVID, and there was scarcity in vaccine, Africa was the last to get it. You only get the surplus, but because you are not a priority. And therefore, that's why it's really important that we need to have completely an about time on how we need to invest in our own relationship by making sure that we benefit from each other, by also sharing the challenges with each other with the view of getting a common solution. The interconnectivity is key, and that's why FCFTA will remain an important vehicle for inclusive economic development for our region.